Mafia: The Old Country is only a couple of days old when we finished this game in 3 streams. It was short, it was to the point, and I feel like that took away from the experience a little bit. I think that there is a lot that they could have done to enhance this experience without making it an extremely long game. I don't think every single game needs to be 30, 40, 50 hours to be considered good. There are shorter games that are truly phenomenal because the pacing is perfect, the storytelling is fantastic, there's lots of character development and very quickly. And while I did enjoy this game, I do feel like they could have done a little bit better in basically every category, and the experience overall would have been significantly better. So now that I've played the full thing, it's time to rate it. Graphics were beautiful. I thought that this game aesthetically and graphically was very pretty. Do I think that this looked like a 2025 AAA high-budget game? Absolutely not. But I do think that it is important to point out that when we are talking about a game that is being sold at around the $50 price tag, and that clearly points to it being more of a AA, maybe having around a $50 million budget, there are games that are significantly better in that price point, and I think that it is important to directly compare this to other games that have even released this year, like Expedition 33. That game was phenomenal, one of the best games that I've ever played, and these are supposed to be kind of comparable in a lot of ways, and I don't necessarily think that Mafia stands against Expedition 33 that well. I did think that it was fun. I did think that it looked pretty good. Are the graphics on that level? Still, no. I'm going to go beautiful because I do think that there was a lot that looked good in this game, though I do think that there were a lot of graphical issues that keep my score down, which will also go into bugs and glitches like the clipping. There's so much clipping with hair through face and hands through pockets and just small issues that really add up in my opinion. So I'm gonna go beautiful, though it was not fantastic, but it also was not bad. I did think that the aesthetic was very nice. There was nothing that felt out of the time period. This game was set in the early 1900s. This game was set up until about 1907. So there was a lot of like older cars and the guns looked older. I thought that it looked pretty good. The buildings were very cool looking. Sicily was very aesthetically pleasing. I do think that the aesthetic was very immersive. I did quite like it. So I'm going to give this a positive. I'm going to say very immersive. I definitely think that they captured the atmosphere that they were going for. I definitely think that they captured the vibe that they were going for. And I think that they actually deserve a lot of praise for that. Music was good. What is here is still very good, but I feel like they could have done better in boss fights and in those very high action-packed intense moments. I felt like with some of the boss fights, which in my opinion were quite repetitive, I do think that the music was quite a letdown. I think that they just needed maybe 2 or 3 more extremely intense tracks, and it would have been brought to another level. In my opinion, music is extremely important to an experience because it stresses you out, it calms you down, it makes you feel creeped out, it makes you feel happy. Music is so pivotal, and I feel like they could have still done a slightly better job. So I'm going to say that the music was good. Was it amazing? No. Was it bad? No. The difficulty was pretty easy. All of the boss fights were very similar. They were all just knife fights. The sections where you're actually walking forward and it's a gunfight and there's lots of gunfire and explosions can be a little bit intense, My issue is that this game is 50% cutscenes, 25% driving, and if I'm being generous, 25% combat. I think that it was very imbalanced in terms of the cutscenes and the driving versus the actual gunplay. I think that they could have balanced that a lot better, and I think that they could have made it a little bit more intense, and my score probably would be higher, but what was there for the combat was easy. I didn't really find any difficulty with it. I didn't think that it was hard. I didn't think that it was unfair. And there was another difficulty that I could have turned the game up to, but every time I play a game, I always play it on the normal or default difficulty, and that was far too easy. I highly doubt that for the higher difficulty, it would even be that difficult either. So I'm just going to go easy. The boss fights, which is a brand new category, were pretty simple. They were all exactly the same, where it was a 1v1 knife fight. You parry them, and you dodge them, you thrust, you slash, you stab, and that is it. You can't bring your guns into those boss fights. You can't cheat the way that even the bosses can, because they will pick up the rocks and the dirt and the sand and throw it at you. You can't do anything like that. There were no special moves that Enzo gains throughout the game, and I think that while they were fine, they were very bare bones, and I think that that is a problem that I have in general with this game, is that everything feels very simple. There's 15 minutes of credits for this game, so there are hundreds to thousands of people that worked on this experience. You would think that it would be a lot more. In general, the game would have more boss fights, it would have more intense boss fights, more intense combat, better writing. It just didn't. And while I did not hate this game, or any of the time I spent in it, I just felt like it was very basic. And the boss fights are no different. I don't think that they pack a punch, and I don't think that they're boring either. And they're certainly not journo mode. I would say more along the lines of boring. They are all exactly the same, which was quite disappointing for me personally. Bugs, we did not face any game-breaking bugs. We faced one time where we jumped over a box and we glitched through the world and it brought me like across the map. And then we did see a lot of visual bugs with clipping, where hair would go through your cheek, or your hands would go through your pockets, or when you try to cross your arms, the hand would glitch through. Did those completely ruin the experience? No, but it did definitely break the immersion quite a bit. So I'm going to go a few bugs. They were not extremely intense, but they were definitely prevalent. The story was okay. I did not hate the idea of getting a new chance at life and being rescued by this family and giving a chance to prove yourself, and you're supposed to be an underdog that only a few people root for, and you're growing into this role that you were given. I don't mind that. I quite liked Enzo. I really liked Isabella. Their relationship was very nice. I liked the Dawn. I liked Leo. I liked Luca. There was quite a few sad moments where people like Luca would die and you would feel sad, though it was very predictable, which is such a major problem. I understand that in a Mafia-esque story, you're going to have somebody coming up in the world becoming a made man. You're going to have moments where there's lots of betrayal, where you have to choose between doing good versus bad, though I still feel like it was just very predictable, where the first girl that you meet in the game is Isabella, you fall in love with her, she says she has to talk to you, she ends up being pregnant. You have to hide your relationship because the Dawn will be angry, people betray the Dawn, and you're really one of the only people left that he can trust, and then you also betray him. I did not like a lot of that. I felt like they could have done so much more and added a couple more twists in. I don't think that it needed to be an M. Night Shyamalan story by any means, but I think that they could have done a little bit better. Also, in terms of the Mafia universe, now I'm not the most knowledgeable on Mafia. I've played the games, I've enjoyed them. There might be more tie-ins than I've recognized, but Mafia 1 takes place in the 1930s, so this isn't too much earlier because this is like 1901 to 1908-ish, and it's set in Sicily instead of America, obviously. Enzo wants to go to America. That's the whole point of the story. Him and Isabella are gonna run away to America with each other, but a lot of the connections are mostly thematic, except for a few returning faces, and only one of them is really that important. The major one was Leo Galante. He, of course, is like an old man in the future Mafia games, and he is a really important character, but he shows up in this, and he's not necessarily a full-on mentor to Enzo the way that even Luca was, but I think that the two of them together was really good. And then you've got Giuseppe. He is in Mafia 1? No, he's in Mafia 2, and he's pretty minor in this game. And then there's a few other ones, like Frank Vinci, but again, it's really just a lot of fan service. It's not like they have a pivotal role in the story, and I feel like there could have been a couple more tie-ins, but it wasn't bad. I just felt like they could have done a little bit more. So I'm going to say that the story was all right. I did not dislike the story or what it does for the Mafia universe. I just feel like it was very predictable and very basic at times. So I'm gonna go all right. The gameplay was okay. I don't think it was boring, and I don't think that it was fun, because a lot of it was very straight to the point. It's always a straight line that you're zigzagging while people are trying to shoot you, or you're 1v1ing a boss who's knifing you and throwing pocket sand at you. I felt like it just could have had so much more of an oomph, and this is also another problem I have. There's not a whole lot extra to do. There's a lack of systems that the other games had, like minor and major offenses. And I understand that you're in the countryside here, so it's not like there's speed limits and you're blowing the stop signs and you're getting arrested constantly, but they could have added something else, like when you're driving through the neighborhood at an insane speed, somebody tries to stop you and they try to beat you up. There are moments where you all are drunk and you're driving across this bridge and you stop and you're like pissing off the side of the bridge. It would have been so much cooler if somebody came up and you were given a chance at that point to either throw the person who's criticizing you like over the bridge, or you could kill them, or like you got arrested, something like that. I just felt like there weren't a lot of like shootouts. They were all very scripted. I just felt like it was very basic all around. So I'm gonna go fun, because I think that it's closer to fun than boring, but I would say it's just all right. Quality of life is standard because this game holds your hand. It's very linear. There's not a whole lot in this game that they could really enhance by adding a few things like a mini-map or like the X-ray vision. You already have every tool that's necessary. Game time was extremely short. 11 and a half hours. Our playthrough was around 11 to 11 and a half. So it is very short. I think that you can have games that are very short and very condensed experiences, but every moment has to matter and be action-packed and be intense, and it has to, impact the story. And I felt like that didn't really happen a lot in this game. So It was short. It was sweet. It was to the point. Price is not worth $50. Now, I'm glad that this was not a $70 experience. Did I think that this was bad? No. If you're a fan of movie games, if you're a fan of Mafia, if you're a fan of short experiences, maybe you want to only put a few hours into a game, then I could see you getting a lot of enjoyment out of this. But it is still not worth $50. I think that this is a good $20 video game. That would be my recommendation. Anything above that, I don't feel is fair. I still had a relatively good time with it, so I would say wait for a sale. Replayability, I personally will not replay this. I don't see a way that they're going to add DLC or anything, so I don't think I'm really going to come back to this. Maybe in a couple of years, if I ever replay all the Mafia games at once, sure, I'd give this another go, but I don't feel like I missed out on anything significant. So I'm just going to go single playthrough, and my score is not going to be amazing. I did not think that this was fantastic, but I also think that it was above average. I thought that it was enjoyable. I don't think that it deserves to be hated on or heavily criticized. I don't think that it does anything extremely poorly. I just think that with a little bit more time and a little bit more effort, they could have significantly enhanced this experience. I think that movie games are definitely easier to pull off, and I don't think that this one quite stuck the landing. I'm going to rate Mafia: The Old Country a 6. If you're a fan of Mafia, if you're a fan of shorter games, if you're a fan of simple experiences, I think that you could enjoy this. I don't think that it's worth the price at release. I felt that it was a little bit too short. I don't think it's got much replayability. I felt that the boss fights and the difficulty were a bit disappointing, so I'm going to say a 6 out of 10. I quite liked a lot of the characters in this game. I really liked Enzo. I liked Isabella. I liked the way that the story progressed with Enzo and how he became a made man. I loved seeing his loyalty in this game. I thought that there were a lot of characters that were also well written. I feel like it doesn't tie in enough to the other Mafia games. I felt like the difficulty in the boss fights weren't quite on par with what I would expect either, but the aesthetic was very nice, the music was pretty good, and all around, I enjoyed it.